The taxi pulled away before I even got the call. My sister Bridget had packed her 3 kids into the back seat, handed the driver my old address, and told him their aunt would be waiting. Except I hadn't lived there in 8 months. And the person who did, well, let's just say karma has a sense of humor. I could never have scripted myself. If you've ever been the family member everyone expects to drop everything, the one whose boundaries are treated like suggestions, the one who's always told, it's just this once, then you already know where this is going. Growing up, I learned early that being the responsible one wasn't a compliment. It was a life sentence. Bridget was the wild one. The fun one. The sister who somehow turned chaos into charm. She forgot to study and still talked teachers into extensions. Blew her allowance by Tuesday and sweet-talked dad into more by Wednesday. Rules bent around her like she had her own gravitational field.
Me?
I was Hazel, the backup plan. The reliable sister. The one mom called when Bridget's car broke down at 2 a.m. The one who covered her shifts at Dad's hardware store when she decided, last minute, to drive to the coast with friends. I told myself that's just what sisters do. That family means showing up. But showing up for Bridget meant she never had to grow up. By adulthood, the pattern had hardened into something fossilized. Unquestioned. Unchallenged. She got married at 25 to a guy named Troy, sales job, big promises, always one deal away from making it big. They had 3 kids in 4 years. Milo, 8. The twins, Jasmine and Jordan, 6. Loud, energetic, sweet kids. Kids who deserved better than parents who treated responsibility like a hobby they'd get to eventually. I loved those kids. I really did. But loving them didn't mean I was supposed to be their full-time backup parent. Bridget called it helping family. I called it what it was, free childcare whenever she felt like having a life. It started small. An hour here. An afternoon there. Then weekends. Then it became, hey Hazel, Troy and I really need a break. Can you take them Friday through Sunday? No asking. No checking my schedule. No acknowledgement that I had a job, a life, or a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a city I'd worked my tail off to afford. The breaking point came on a Thursday in late September. I was at my desk at Crestwood Marketing, staring at a campaign pitch due by 5 p.m. when my phone buzzed. Bridget's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer. I knew that tone before I even heard it, that breezy entitlement that meant she wanted something. Hey, Hayes, she chirped. Quick favor. I closed my eyes. Troy and I got last-minute tickets to this wine tasting in Napa this weekend. Big deal for his work. Can you take the kids Friday night through Sunday? I inhaled slowly. Bridget, I can't. I have plans. Plans. She laughed, like I'd told a joke. Come on. What plans? You're always free. I'm not always free, I said, keeping my voice level. I have a work event Saturday, and I'm seeing someone Sunday. That last part was a slight stretch, but it didn't matter. Whether it was a date or me sitting alone in silence, the point was simple. I said no. Hayes, seriously, she pressed. This is important for Troy's career. We never get to do anything. You know how hard it is with 3 kids. I know, I said, but I'm not available. There was a pause. Then her voice shifted.
Wow.
Good to know where I stand. Bridget. No, it's fine. I get it. You're too busy for your family now. Must be nice. She hung up. I stared at my phone, that familiar guilt rising in my chest, thick, practiced, automatic. For a moment, it tried to swallow me, but I pushed it down. I'd said no. For once, I'd actually said no. I should have known she wouldn't accept it. Friday afternoon, I left work early to get ready for my date. Aaron and I were planning to try a new Korean barbecue place downtown. I was actually excited. I'd even bought a new blouse, deep green, the kind that made me feel like someone who had her life together. I was halfway through my makeup when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Hi. Is this Hazel Brennan? A man's voice, cautious. Yes. This is Officer Campos with the Portland Police Department. I'm calling because we have 3 children here who were dropped off at a residence on Maple Street. The homeowner says they were told you'd be picking them up. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry, what? 3 kids. Milo, Jasmine, and Jordan. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed. They say their mother put them in a taxi and sent them to your address, he continued. But the person living there doesn't know them and called us. Bridget had actually done it. She'd put her kids in a taxi. Alone. Sent them to my apartment after I explicitly said no. Except I didn't live on Maple Street anymore. Officer, I said slowly, my hand starting to shake. I moved 8 months ago. Those are my sister's children. There was a pause. So, your sister sent her children to an address she believed was yours after you told her you weren't available?
Yes.
Yesterday. Another pause. Longer this time. Do you have contact information for the mother? I gave him Bridget's number, my mind racing. What if the person living there had been dangerous? What if they hadn't called? What if? The officer thanked me and hung up. I sat there staring at the wall, my date completely forgotten. 20 minutes later, Bridget called. What the hell, Hazel? I didn't let her finish.
No.
What the hell is wrong with you? The police called me. You refused to take the kids. I didn't refuse to take them. I don't live there anymore. I moved 8 months ago. Silence. You moved?
Yes.
I told you. I told Mom. I told Dad. You didn't listen. Well, how was I supposed to know? Maybe by asking. Or by not dumping your kids on someone who explicitly said no. Her voice turned sharp. They're family. You're supposed to help. Help, I said. You mean be your unpaid on-call nanny? You're unbelievable. No, Bridget. You are unbelievable. You put 3 kids in a taxi alone to an address you didn't even confirm. Do you understand how dangerous that is? She was quiet for a beat. Then dismissive. They're fine. They're fine because the person living there called the cops. You got lucky. Whatever, she snapped. I have to go pick them up now. Her resentment was thick, like I had inconvenienced her. She hung up. I sat there, shaking, furious, sick to my stomach, and something else. Something had shifted. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about boundaries being crossed. It was about how far she was willing to go when I finally stopped saying yes. And I didn't yet know what that realization was going to cost us. Relief came first. Not the loud, triumphant kind, just a steady, unfamiliar calm. For the first time, I hadn't caved. I hadn't rushed in to fix Bridget's mess. And somehow, the universe had stepped in and backed my boundary in the most poetic way possible. I just didn't know yet how poetic it was about to get. I found out 2 days later who lived in my old apartment. Her name was Vanessa Pritchard. She was a social worker for Child Protective Services. I learned this because she called me Sunday morning. Hi, is this Hazel Brennan? Yes. This is Vanessa Pritchard. I'm the woman who called the police on Friday about the children who were dropped at my door. My stomach tightened. Oh, hi. I'm so sorry about that. That was my sister. She didn't know I'd moved. I figured, she said. Her voice was calm, professional, but there was something else underneath it.
Wait. Care.
I wanted to reach out because after what happened, I'm required to file a report. A report. Yes, she continued gently. When children are placed in unsafe situations or effectively abandoned, we have to document it. The police report already flags it, and because I work in child welfare, I also have an obligation to follow up. I didn't know what to say. I want to be clear, she added. I'm not trying to cause problems for your family. But what your sister did was reckless. Those children were dropped off by a taxi driver who didn't verify anyone was home. They stood on my porch for 10 minutes before I opened the door. They're 6 and 8 years old. My throat tightened. I know, I said quietly. I told her I couldn't watch them. She did it anyway. I thought as much. Vanessa paused. CPS will likely reach out to your sister for a welfare check. It's standard procedure. This can't just disappear. I understand. And I'm sorry you got dragged into this, she said, her tone softening. Boundaries are hard, especially with family. I almost cried. A stranger understood something my own sister never had. After we hung up, I sat on my couch staring at nothing. Bridget was about to get a visit from CPS because of her own choices. And I didn't feel guilty. The fallout came fast. Bridget called Monday night, her voice already pitched high. They came to my house, Hazel. CPS came to my house. I know. You know. Her breath hitched. Did you call them?
No.
The woman who lives at my old apartment works for CPS. She's legally required to file a report when children are put in unsafe situations. They weren't abandoned. You put them in a taxi to a stranger's house. I thought it was your house, which I told you I moved from. And even if I hadn't, I said no. She started crying then. Not quiet tears. Angry, jagged sobs. They asked me everything, she said. How I discipline them. About Troy's job. About our finances. They made me feel like a criminal. They're doing their job. This is your fault. I stayed quiet for a beat. If you had just helped me. Stop. My voice came out harder than it ever had with her. This is not my fault. You ignored my boundary.
You put your kids at risk.
These are the consequences. They're going to keep checking on us, she snapped. Do you know how humiliating that is? Maybe you should have thought about that before dumping 3 kids at a random address. She sucked in a breath. I can't believe you. You're really going to act like you did nothing wrong. I didn't do anything wrong, I said. I said no. That's allowed. Family doesn't say no. Family doesn't exploit each other either, Bridget. She hung up. I set my phone down and exhaled slowly. My hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. I felt clear, like I'd stepped out of a fog I'd been living in for years. But the storm wasn't over. By Tuesday, my mom called. Honey, she said carefully, what's going on between you and Bridget? I explained everything. The request. My refusal.
The taxi.
The old address.
CPS.
Mom listened quietly, then sighed. Sweetheart, I know Bridget can be a lot, but she's overwhelmed. 3 kids is hard. She put those kids in danger. She made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting lunches. This was deliberate. She ignored what I said. She was desperate. She was entitled. Silence. Honey, she said finally, softer now. Maybe you could have just helped this one time. There it was. The familiar script. The assumption that my boundaries were flexible when they inconvenienced someone else. Mom, I said, steady now. I'm not discussing this anymore. I said no. What happened after that is on her. You're being very cold. I'm being clear. Mom didn't call back. I knew how this would go. I'd be painted as the selfish sister. Bridget would lean into the victim narrative. The family would nod along. But I also knew something else. I wasn't going back. The CPS visit wasn't a one-time thing. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa's report triggered follow-ups. A caseworker named Angela started doing random welfare checks, calling Bridget, verifying school attendance, asking neighbors questions. I only knew because Dad called frustrated. This has gone too far, Hazel. Your sister's a wreck. She sent her kids to a stranger's house. She thought it was yours. I moved.
He sighed.
Can't you talk to that woman? Tell her it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. And even if it were, that's not how CPS works. So, you're just going to let your sister suffer? I'm going to let her face the consequences of her actions like an adult. Dad didn't like that. He muttered something about family loyalty and hung up. I waited for the guilt. It never came. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time, someone else was holding Bridget accountable.
Not me.
Not my parents. The system. And I hadn't lifted a finger. 3 weeks after the incident, Bridget posted on Facebook. We weren't friends anymore. I'd quietly unfriended her, but my cousin Lacey sent me a screenshot. The post was long, rambling, drenched in performative vulnerability. She wrote about being a stretched-thin mother of 3, about making a mistake, about trusting the wrong person, about being investigated like a criminal. She warned other moms to protect themselves. She didn't mention the taxi, or my refusal, or the address she never confirmed. The comments were flooded with heart emojis. Stay strong, Mama. You don't deserve this. I stared at the screen, recognizing myself as the unnamed villain. And for the first time, I realized something unsettling. Bridget wasn't just angry. She was rewriting the story. And I had a feeling she wasn't done yet. The post was wrapped in martyr language. Lacey texted me a screenshot with one line underneath. Is she serious right now? I didn't reply. What was there to say? Bridget had always been good at rewriting history. This was just her latest draft. But then something unexpected happened. Someone commented under her post. Wait, is this about the thing where you sent your kids to someone's house without asking? My friend's neighbor is a social worker, and you can't just drop kids off at random addresses. I stared at the screen. Another comment followed. You can't ignore someone saying no and then act shocked when people react. Then another. Yeah, I heard about this too. Weren't the kids sent to the wrong house? That's not a mistake. That's dangerous. And another. If someone tells you no and you do it anyway, that's not them failing you. That's you failing to respect boundaries. The thread started growing. People Bridget didn't even know were pointing out the holes in her story, asking the questions she hoped no one would ask, naming the things she'd tried so hard to bury. Within hours, the post disappeared. Lacey texted again. Oh, she's big mad now. I smiled, not out of spite, but because the truth has a way of surfacing, even when people try to drown it in sympathy. A month later, Vanessa called. Hi, Hazel. I wanted to update you on the case. My stomach tightened, then eased. Okay. The welfare checks are complete. The children are safe. The home environment is stable enough. And your sister completed a parenting course as part of the agreement to close the case. A parenting course? I repeated. Yes, she said. It's standard when there's been a lapse in judgment that puts children at risk. She wasn't happy about it, but she completed it. The case is closed. I exhaled slowly. Thank you for letting me know. Vanessa paused. And Hazel, for what it's worth, you did the right thing. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, letting that sink in. Bridget had to take a parenting course. Not because I reported her, not because I plotted revenge, but because her own actions forced accountability. And I was finally free. The months that followed were quiet. Bridget didn't call. Neither did my parents, at least not much. Occasionally, a neutral text would come through. Hope you're well. Nothing more. The constant demand for my time, my energy, my compliance, it evaporated. I saw the kids once, at a family birthday party in December. They ran up to me like nothing had changed. Milo showed me a drawing. Jasmine proudly announced she'd lost a tooth. Jordan asked if I still had the puzzle we'd done together last Christmas. I hugged them. I listened. I loved them. But when Bridget asked, casually, like nothing had ever happened, if I could watch them on New Year's Eve, I smiled and said, I can't. But I hope you find someone. Her jaw tightened. She didn't push. Not because I was cruel, but because she'd learned something. I wasn't her fallback plan anymore. I used to think family meant sacrificing yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. That love was measured by how much you could endure before breaking. I was wrong. Real love doesn't ignore boundaries. It doesn't punish you for having them. And it doesn't put children in taxis to manipulate you into compliance. What happened with Bridget wasn't planned. I didn't orchestrate CPS. I didn't engineer the parenting course or the welfare checks. I just said no. And the consequences that followed were never mine to carry. The system did what I couldn't. It held her accountable, without turning me into the villain. People ask me sometimes if I regret not just taking the kids that one weekend to avoid all the drama. The answer is no, because it was never just one weekend. It was years of being the backup plan, the unpaid labor, the person whose life mattered less. And I'm done with that story. Now I'm writing a new one where I show up for people who respect me, where I help because I choose to, not because I'm coerced, where my time, my space, and my peace are not up for negotiation. Bridget and I aren't close anymore. Maybe we never really were. I don't hate her. I just don't owe her access to my life. And honestly, I've never felt this free. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever been the one expected to bend until you break, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you believe boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. And remember this, saying no to the wrong people is how you finally say yes to yourself. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.